You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick and I'm happy to have you with us. Today we welcome and very excited to have Pam Sanders, who you co-own TSA Sales Associates, LLC, last 14 years with your sister. You're in a very male-dominated industry and one of the few businesses like yours that is women business-owned and operated. That'll be part of our conversation today for sure. You're a graduate of Georgia Tech with a degree in mechanical engineering, which I remember when I first started getting to know you, meeting you many, many years ago. I was like, wow, that's amazing. How does she go into that? So we'll talk about that too. And your non-traditional career path, because even though you went to school for that, you're doing what you do today. In between there, you did some different project engineering, nonprofit work in Mexico, and you're fluent in Spanish, and which if you go on vacation in Mexico, that's really helpful. That's amazing. And you have a master's in Latin American and Caribbean studies before the last, like I said, 14 years of co-owning this business with your sister and being a women-owned business and all those successful accolades and challenging words to say. So happy to have you here with us to, again, it's been conversation back and forth about all these experiences and how you've navigated to the current level of success of where you're at today. So speaking of that, and I think I mentioned this ahead of time, engineering is scary to me. There's mechanical, there's chemical, there's this, there's that, I don't get how it all works. So tell me mechanical engineering and what your company does in to the general public layman terms.
Okay, sure. So, what our company does is we represent several different manufacturers, lines of equipment, and We'll design systems, we'll put things together, we'll sometimes pieces of equipment, sometimes entire systems for our customers, and then present them with those solutions. The mechanical side of that is all of the equipment, how it works together, achieving certain rates, delivering materials, things like that.
So when you say, sorry to interrupt, systems, does that mean a line? So they're building something or they're making something and you're going to put that system together so that it's that line is working?
Correct. And it might be part of a line, a certain part of their process to get something accomplished. Or if it's the air pollution side of our business, it would be an entire system to capture all of the dust that their process generates and take care of that for them.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Again, it's just also confusing, overwhelming to me, and I wasn't sure how that worked. But the air pollution side was interesting when I looked, again, because we've known each other I don't even know how long. So that's the fun part of diving into some of these conversations. I get to really go into what do they do professionally? What does that mean?
Right.
I'm like, okay, this is exciting. The air pollution side of it, I was like, I didn't even know that was really a thing. So is it air pollution for those companies that have the process that they're doing the building for some end user, that you're controlling the air pollution in their building or around their building?
Right. And it's mostly the pollution generated by the process. So some of it is actual stuff that they need to get out of the air or they can't emit. But a lot of it is things that the workers don't want to be breathing. So it's getting it right at the source so it's not, flying through the air and workers aren't having to have it in their breathing space.
And you're representing these companies that have all these pieces and you're going to your customers, clients saying, okay, here's your space, here's what the problem we want to solve, and here's how we put all of this together. And we're going to pull this piece from this company, this piece, and we're going to come in and just basically design and tell you what you need and where to get it from.
Right. And that's where I get to use that mechanical engineering piece because I run the calculations to figure out what is required and then pull that all together for them.
And that's why we've gotten along for so long, because calculations and things, I knew early on, I was like, Pam and I have something in common here. She is a analytical calculation based thinker and I am too. So the mechanical engineering then is a lot of, when you say calculations, like what are you actually calculating? Is it space? Is it the big size of these things? I'm probably making it way too simple.
We do look at that, but the main calculations, the bigger concerns are what kind of, from the capture points, what's required, and then how much air volume is required for that. And then when we lay out all the duct work that's required, static pressure calculations are probably the most critical because that determines the size of fan we need on the system to pull the suction and to pull it through all of those elbows, joints, everything to get the design air volume that we need through the entire system so that it actually does what it needs to do.
What's the skill set? So I hear math, I hear science in that. Is to become a mechanical engineer, maybe any type of engineer, is it a combination of those? Like what is required to really be good or interested or passionate about what you do?
Right. So it's definitely math and science for any engineering degree. It's heavy on the math, I would say. More so, but I will say it's not like I'm doing calculus. I had to take a lot of calculus, but it's more,
it's not like Goodwill Hunting where they've got that big board where he writes this huge calculation.
Yeah, if you can do college algebra and you can do geometry and you can do, you got to do it well, but it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah, being good with that problem solving, being able to do it over and over, think a little bit differently, but you don't have to recreate the wheel math-wise necessarily. So thinking of that, we're similar in age. So we go back, if that's okay, a couple decades to say, Pam's going to go to Georgia Tech, is going to be an engineer. To me, I hear Georgia Tech and I think, whoa, this is the big leagues. Like if somebody's going to, especially a woman probably back then, I'm going to go engineering at Georgia Tech, mad props. Why, how were you interested in that? And am I way off in your experience and what it was like?
Well, Georgia Tech is a phenomenal engineering school. And back then in the 90s, I had never even heard of Georgia Tech at first, but somehow someone recommended, hey, if you're looking at engineering, you should apply here.
Because you're from St. Louis.
Right.
Correct. So this isn't, we're not local Rolla or whatever it's called now where everybody knows about it. This is.
Right. But props to Rolla because I did go to engineering camp there and confirm that I wanted to do engineering. So I had, once I made the decision that I wanted to go into engineering, I was looking at some of the Midwestern schools, University of Illinois and Purdue, and I had it down. I was probably going to go to Purdue, actually, and then went down and looked at Georgia Tech and just fell in love.
What was it about it that, you walk on campus?
It was more urban and it was warmer. Which is always important for me.
At some point we talk about being in Mexico. That makes a lot of sense.
I always like to go south, not north. And I just did a program where, you got to meet the other kids who were doing the studies. And I just felt like, okay, yeah, this is a place where I could do this.
Yeah, because I've met some of your friends through there and, similar. You can tell there's a real bond and camaraderie that you were able to build. Do you think it was... I'm jumping too, because there's another question I want to ask, but actually maybe this is important. Do you think it's because of the school situation? Do you think it was, a lot of them were, I think, from the different outings, women. Was it because you bonded of, hey, there's a lot of men here and there's few of us? Like what lended itself to building those deep relationships?
Yeah, it is unique and interesting. Being at Georgia Tech, you definitely have to make an effort to get to know women. And if you just went to your classes, I would have like 3 women that I could have, in some semesters. So well,
tell me, so you walk into a classroom, maybe your first engineering classroom. What was that like? Was it, there's 2 girls and there 20 boys? Like, were you overwhelmed?
Yeah, it was about a 3-to-1 ratio in general in the major, but some of the bigger classes obviously had more. But when you got into the smaller classes, it was like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of us in a class. A lot of times.
Was it intimidating, or were you beyond that at that point?
At that point, I think I was beyond that. I was just used to it, But I did join a sorority, which is where I met like 8 of those 10 girls that I still hang out with. And I don't know that I would have done that had I gone to a different school. But because, there I was like, oh, I really want to make sure I get to know women and have friends that are women. So that was sort of how that happened.
It's nothing against men. Right. Nothing against men. Just like, hey, we're going through certain different things here. Need to have a little bit of a sisterhood around us to
definitely
meander through the next few years.
Yes.
So you mentioned your first class, you were kind of used to that by then, as far as maybe male-female ratio, whatever. What got you used to that? Because I'm thinking, oh, college is probably the first time you're really experiencing this, but it sounds like it's not.
Well, no, I think it was. But I guess I'm thinking the smaller classes.
Got it.
So I had already kind of seen on campus, and I mean, there was like 30-something fraternities and 5 sororities. So it was like kind of the dynamic of just being on campus was already that way. So yeah.
Well, that tells the story there, the number of fraternities versus sororities.
Right.
That paints a picture there.
Right.
So your time at Georgia Tech and being female, I mean, any challenges, issues you faced, whether the industry itself or, you know, again, going through it, like, is this for me? This is harder than I thought. Oh, there's so few of us here. Am I going to get through this? Anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, there were times where certain aspects, certain classes were very hard. And it was just, you know, if it didn't click in my brain right away, there was 2 classes in particular, Mechanics of Solids 1 and Mechanics of Solids 2. For some reason, those 2 were my struggle point. But in those classes, you know, I mean, it just, I mean, I obviously got through them, and they were difficult, but I just did what I've always done and went and saw the professor and tried to get the extra help, did the best I could, you know. But I think what sort of saved me from that was co-oping. And I got to co-op. I actually had a job at Saturn, part of GM at the time. And it was every other quarter after my freshman year. So I'd have a quarter of working at a plant in Tennessee, and then I'd come back to Atlanta and go to Georgia Tech. And I think seeing that and seeing actually things applied made a huge difference for me, because when you're doing these classes that are really, really hard and you're going, why do I need to know this? Mm-hmm. You know, and you don't need to know all of it to do every job, obviously, but I could see the value, and then I would come back and go, okay, like I've got to figure this out. I've got, you know, and that's how I think that gave me the motivation I needed.
Mm-hmm. Anything else about college or that experience, Georgia Tech engineering student? I mean, how many were 4 years? How many years was that program?
Well, it's a 4-year program, but with the co-oping, I was there about 4.5. I graduated in December. So
Right. But it sounds like well worth it to get real world applied experience.
Very, very worth it. It helped me know what I wanted to do when I got out, and I would have had no idea otherwise. So.
Well, so you get out. What do you do next?
Well, that's where I was really focused on project management or project engineering, and so I got hired at Proctor and Gamble in Cincinnati, and I had a project engineer position, and that's kind of like you have to understand the technical parts of it, but you're also doing, you know, budgets, schedules for a project so that it gets done when it needs to get done. And, you know, sometimes I would have to tell the engineers, you can't design anymore because if we don't roll this out by a certain time, the people in marketing are going to kill us because we'll have missed our window. Like, it has to get out before Kimberly Clark gets their whatever diapers out, because it was diapers that I was working on.
I should tap into you. I'm involved with the diaper bank around here, so diapers are important.
Yeah.
What kind of, I would imagine that's a different level of skill set, because you said I have to go back to the engineers and say, you know, no, we got to get this done. Were you ever put in an awkward position, or was that challenging to wear that different hat, but also know where they're coming from, but have to like kind of put your foot down?
Well, I think I was always good at seeing the big picture, and I wasn't, even though I have my engineering degree, like I was not a hardcore math and science person, say in high school. I mean, I was decent at it, but I mean, English, Spanish, history, those were my like easier strong suit classes. So, but just to have the bigger picture and be able to go to those guys, talk their language, you know, say, hey, I get that we could make this better, absolutely, but we have to get it out by this time. So what can we do in this window that we have to make it the best we can make it, and then we got to be done. And they would, you know, they've responded well for the most part.
What do you think helped you be most successful in that role, in doing that? Because I'm sure some people are probably like, oh, you know, no, you don't know our job, or we got to do it this way.
Right. Or you just graduated a year ago. Well, why do you think you know about this? But yeah, I think probably, and this might sound weird, but being able to listen. And so I think, and I think that's one of the skill sets that really helps in the field, because a lot of people aren't good listeners, and I think your stereotypical engineer might not be a good listener, and so there's a lot of folks out there that, you know, they see the best way to do it and they're just trying to get there. But the whole communication aspect and of bringing all of these people together and getting them kind of the buy-in to have the vision and, hey, we're all in this together. This is what we got to do. Your role is really important. You know, let me hear from you and understand what's important to you, but then we have the big picture. And so I think just being able to listen and then effectively communicate, hey, I hear what you're saying. Here's what we got to do, and here's when we got to do it by. So let's do as much as we can of what you're saying, but we do have a deadline, you know?
I was mentoring or just meeting with a woman, because woman makes me feel old to say that, but who is interested, you know, she'll be graduating soon, amazing backstory. I mean, just I was so super proud of what she's doing, but she was asking me about another major, and I said, well, I would consider project management. I said, I think no matter what you do, and as you're talking about all that, I'm thinking, oh, my kids, my family, this job, coaching, whatever the case may be, listening, communicating, big picture, bringing it all back together, but acknowledging all the roles. Like, wow, what a important and super powerful skill to have.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then it, you know, approaching different things, and every time, you know, trying to figure out, hey, who are the important people? What are their roles, and how does it all fit together so that we can get something accomplished?
And yet still be that kid,
right?
1 year out of school. And I mean, you know, you say that, and I'm sitting here with you, and I'm like, wow, I've always seen her professional, Pam,
Sure.
super smart, knowledgeable, successful. And I think back to, I guess she would have been, you know, just out of college. Of course, we all were. How did you bridge that gap or what skills or tools did you use for them to start listening to you, or say, oh, she knows what she's talking about, or how did that work?
Yeah. Well, I think it did help in that I was at Proctor and Gamble that had a lot of young engineers. So it wasn't like I was the only young person, which I think makes a difference. You know, there were companies I interviewed at where I was like, wow, not only will I be the only woman at this entire facility, except for the lady at the front desk, but I also, you know, am young, and that was a lot scarier than going to a place that had a variety and had young, you know, probably had more women than some of the other places that I looked at. So I think it wasn't, you know, they were used to dealing with young people. And then I think from my standpoint, I was always very confident. And so I think even if I didn't know something, you know, we'd be in a meeting and I'd go, okay, yep, got that. I'd be taking my notes and I'd go figure it out. I didn't act like I knew things I didn't know, but I didn't act like I was going to fall apart either. So I just think the going, okay, well, I got to write that down and go get that figured out. What does that mean? But then coming back and knowing what it meant, and, you know, using my resources to find out what I needed to know.
Yeah, I think a lot of conversations I've had, whether it's podcast or not or whatnot, it's not being true and being, I don't know, use the word authentic. I know it's a buzzword, but really being true and saying, you know, being able to say, I don't know that, but I'm going to figure it out. But what you said was, I'm not going to get super nervous. I'm going to take my notes and I'm going to go use my resources and I'm going to go figure that piece out. But what I don't want to skirt out over something you said, which I think is interesting and could be a challenge, is you're going into some of these companies and there's no women there except for potentially the person at the front desk. I mean, what was that feeling being in that situation? You walk in there, and how did you even know?
How did I know?
Yeah, like, okay, there's no women here. Was it just when they interviewed you, it was just men, or did you walk around, you're like, I don't see any women?
Yeah. I mean, I remember specifically, the economy was good when I graduated. I had a lot of interviews, and they would fly you out to places, and you could see the facilities. And I remember it was a refinery in Louisiana. Literally walked in, there was the lady at the front, and then we walked through the whole plant, had different interviews, like with different people, and I did not see another woman. And I could tell, and that was, they probably had a program, okay, we're trying to get more women here. And I was just like, wow, this is I don't know. I mean, the whole environment was not appealing already, but on top of that, I'm like, I don't want to go somewhere where I'm the only one, and I'm sure people that do that are important, and we need people to do that, but I was not interested.
Well, and it sounds like, because you're right, like there's always a first of something.
Right.
Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever. But if you were already not interested-ish, and that was layered on top of it, that was just another reason, like, it's not the right fit. And again, I think going back to what we talked about, you got to be true to yourself and what you're comfortable with. But yeah, that could be challenging. I mean, we sit here and we think in 2023, there's a lot more women everywhere. But it wasn't that long ago. That totally different story, different picture. So not having necessarily done that myself, walk into a building where it's like, I'm the only one that looks like me. And again, there's no judgment there. It's just, it is what it is. Yeah. And so how that must have felt, there must have been some feelings there.
Yeah. Just kind of like, ooh, a little uncomfortable, a little like, it's just kind of like, oh, I feel a little out of place here.
Right. So it sounds like, though, you were then able to find Proctor and Gamble and whatnot, find the right space where, while not overly abundant, at least there was enough, kind of like Georgia Tech. Well, there's some sororities, there's enough.
Right.
Where I can, I can still go charge my path, be comfortable, learn, do a great job, and come out of it better.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So a lot of what you said there was, too, I think, that authenticity of, I'm going to take these notes, I'm going to go use my resources. So it sounds like when you think use resources, probably books, different things, but also asking for help from those around you. Mm-hmm. And was that easy or hard to do, being the young kid and young female? It
wasn't hard for me, because I've always just asked for help, or asked people, hey, what do you think? I like to get a lot of opinions. And I had a great boss. So he was really helpful and always available and willing to, he wanted me to do well. So,
which is good. Not all bosses are like that,
correct.
Which is counterintuitive. Yeah. So it's good. It sounds like you had an early person to help mentor and push you. And
I had an early person, and then I also had a project management stint at my co-op, and which helped me determine that's what I wanted to do. And so honestly, I was really lucky to be able to find a place where I could get where I really knew I wanted to be right away. So many other job offers were, hey, yeah, you can come do this, but you have to design, the interior pieces of an airplane for 5 years, and then we'll talk about project management. And I was like, 5 soul-crushing years of design. Because that's just not my jam. And so, I was able to find that early and then start developing what I wanted to develop. So I was very motivated. I felt good. I was in a good place. So I would ask anybody who was available. And there was another woman, a woman I can think of that was older, had been there longer, also went to Georgia Tech, that I could go to and say, hey, what do you think about this? So
it sounds like it was a very welcoming, open environment to learn and accept people in, different roles, responsibilities. And that really helped you grow your career, because it could have been easy probably to take some of those other jobs to start. And I'm sure coming out of Georgia Tech, an engineer going to get paid a lot, could have been potentially easy to say, I'm just going to take that job because it's there, versus
keep looking. Okay, here, found and was able to find what I wanted. So
how long did that take?
I guess it was probably like the whole second, that last semester of interviewing. And I went to, I don't know how many companies I went to, but and I had my first job offer, which they kept coming back and like increasing it, adding signing bonuses, because, they're trying to get you to come out to Toledo, Ohio, and so, versus, I think it was one of the last ones I actually got secured. And as soon as I got it, I'm like, yes, this is what I'm doing.
You knew it. So it sounds like leading to that path was having some of those, the ability to have different experiences while in school.
Yes.
And trying different and new things. And then once you knew, you knew. You're
Yes.
like, this is my thing. I'm not going to settle. Something will come. I'll figure it out, but I'm going to hold my guns and stick to what I know is right for me.
Right. Yeah. And if I ever talk to anybody, other women now in college studying engineering and asking for advice, I'm always get a co-op, get an intern, as many as you can during the experience, even if it takes you an extra year to graduate, because you've got, not only do you have experience, but you have knowledge of what do I like, what do I not like, where do I want to head with this? Because there's a lot of paths, within each branch of engineering. So
It almost sounds like, even if it seems like a lot, right? Go one more year and
looking at a year now, it's like a year, that's nothing.
Right. But it could save you years meandering through companies and jobs that you wouldn't like. So that's a great, I think, tip to up front, take a little bit more, gain a little bit more experience. So maybe you're hitting the ground running in a better space. So you're at Proctor and Gamble for how long?
I was only there 2 years. I got to do some big projects. I think the first one was a $2 million project. They told me they'd give that to me because it was a small one. And I remember thinking, okay, that's just small. But, you get used to the big numbers. I was there for 2 years. And then that's when I kind of made a decision, hey, I'm going to go do this nonprofit work in Mexico. And I remember telling my boss, and then I had to go meet with my boss's boss. And he was like, so this is where I would normally try to get you to stay, but I'm thinking this isn't about money. And I was like, yeah, no, it's not. And he's like, well, what about a sabbatical? And I go, well, I've committed to 4 years already. And he goes, oh yeah, we don't do 4-year sabbaticals. I figured not. So he was real nice and said, hey, if you ever want to come back, change your mind, let us know. Which made my grandparents feel better. So,
Well, and that probably says a lot for who you are and the work that you did there for them to leave that door open. I mean, that's huge. So there's probably a lot of good advice there, like, work hard, contribute. I don't know. What advice, what do you think you did those 2 years for them to open that door back and want to keep you?
Well, yeah, I think I did work hard. I made sure I got done what was asked of me and, made sure I completed my, everything that I needed to do. And I also had a lot of fun with it. I really tried to get to know people, other people in my position, other people in other positions, people up the chain. There wasn't really anybody down the chain, but, just getting to know people, being involved, goofing around with people, going, hanging out at lunch. I just think it makes you, as people get to know you, it just increases their ability to work with you and know, hey, okay, Pam cares about what she does. She's not just checking her box. So,
it would be easy. So with my background in numbers and accounting, sometimes we can be more introverted, if you will. And especially when I was younger and had kids and it was like, I just want to get my work done. I want to get out here. I want to go home. But that can be short-sighted. Even though you're thinking, okay, the work's going to speak for itself and I'm just going to do a great job, that can be a little short-sighted. Some areas that may work. But I think, to your point, building those relationships all over, it sounds like not even just in your close working group, but expanding beyond that and building those relationships among more people at Procter and Gamble was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you can be extroverted, but there are also times where you can be like, okay, I'm just going to, what do you think, how'd you do it? Or did it just come naturally to you?
I think it did come naturally, but also, I was still single. I was, I had the time to invest and I still got plenty of, rest or downtime or whatever I needed. But yeah, I think I was just looking to get to know people. I was in a new city,
yep.
Have a good time. So what could we do at lunch? I remember bringing a Frisbee one time and going, okay, we're going to go out the building and play Frisbee. And I got like 2 or 3 people and they're like, are we going to get like demoted because we're out here playing? I'm like, no, it's lunch. We need a break. Now we'll go back and, just,
How many seminars have we been in where the company tells you to get exercise or get fresh air? That's what we're doing.
We're just out having fun. We're not out here all day. Let's go. So, I don't know. I think I was just very focused on, hey, let's have a good time with all this. I mean, it's not just work, work, work. So we might as well have a good time. And honestly, at the end of the day, the relationships help you get stuff done so much more efficiently anyway. So it's well worth the time spent.
Right. When you know that you see, the face or the whatever on the other side of it, yeah, it's harder to say no or under-deliver.
Right.
She's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to see them at lunch, or, we're going to go hang out. And I know, anyway, yeah, so true. So, I think that's probably a great tip that I don't even know that I've talked with anybody about yet, of get outside your little cube or whatever it is, which, before I jump there, get outside, more people. So thinking about COVID, a lot of people work from home now. How do we bridge that gap, or how do we help there?
Right. Yeah. COVID is tough. COVID has changed, everything,
Good,
a lot
bad,
of things,
yeah.
But yeah, if you are working, at home, which, sometimes I'm working from home, but for what I'm doing, I make sure I get out and see clients. And for a while we couldn't. So we were doing a lot of Teams calls, where at least you do get to see, you can still see each other. And I would encourage people to use their video,
right.
Because I think there's some people that, okay, I'm going to be home and just leave it off and I don't have to brush my hair or whatever. But it is important to see who you're talking to know what, just feel more like that connection with the person. Even when you're, it's not like we're going to go hang out and whatever, because you're my client necessarily, but I want people to know who I am and who I'm about. And I just think when you see someone, it makes a big difference. So Teams is, the next best thing. In person is still better. Just because you can interact in person, see what you need to see, talk about it, really get the nitty gritty, talk to the other 5 people in the office that you wouldn't have talked to on that Teams call, that are involved and have really valuable information. And the other thing I always say, and this is more specific to plants and engineering, but like get out on the floor, see what the operators are saying. I mean, these are the folks that use the equipment every single day. And knowing what they think and their ideas, can make or break a project.
Well, it sounds like it goes back to that whole project management. And I think and I'm sure it works great on the floor, but I think every job, right? So even with what I do for my day job at Minetta, we've got people who are putting together things before I see it. And I want to know what their pain points are, what their challenges are, or I want them to tell me, we shouldn't be doing it this way. This would be a lot better way to do it. Great. Tell me that. Let's change it. Let's, do it as a team. And I think you're right. There's no way to do that if you're not somehow getting out and around and about.
Right. And doing that several times, even for the same project. Go out, talk to the operators on a different shift. They might have a different perspective, or the maintenance guys that have to work on the equipment. What's important to them, and all of this stuff makes it work down the road, because if the maintenance guy can't do the maintenance, we got a problem.
Right. So you're at Procter and Gamble. How did the Mexico nonprofit work come up?
So that was really kind of, I guess, ironic or interesting or whatever. But when I was my last year at Georgia Tech, I got involved in a campus ministry down there. And then through that, I went on this mission trip over the summer in Mexico City before I graduated college. So I met different people, these different organizations through that had decided to form a new nonprofit and bring basically teams of kids, graduated from college kids, down to whatever location with the idea of, it was sort of a campus ministry model, but it was focused on college kids, and it was focused on, we were focused on service and start community, And so they asked me, do you want to be on this team that's going to go to the first team of this? This is what we're doing, going down to Mexico City. And I did have to think about that, but it wasn't that long, but, where I was like, yeah, I got to do this now. This sounds great. And made that decision to go down there.
So what exactly what was the group doing down in Mexico City?
So it was like starting a campus ministry at some college campuses down there, and then we evolved it. I ended up being the team leader for that team, and then we had there was 5 of us that went down there, and we worked with several universities, and we were very ecumenically minded with it. We worked with a really cool Catholic priest down there who helped support kind of what we did, and we would send certain kids to him who wanted advice and things like that from somebody in the Catholic faith. And so we would And then we focused a lot on service. So we would take these kids and give them experiences like going to the garbage dumps where people lived and like literally processed garbage. And we'd go play with those kids and, do their nails, play soccer, bring them lunch, and just different things. We worked with orphanages. We did a lot of different work down there, which was just very hard to sum up quickly. But it was a lot of really neat stuff.
Is that what, so I'm thinking, the first time you walked down there, but you did the internship or the summer program. Mm-hmm. Was that very similar?
Different, because at the summer program, we were actually working down there for missionaries with like a church plant and just kind of helping them. We were starting this from scratch, and it was all college students. And I think, when you think of college students, you're talking about a much more open-minded group as well. So I think we were able to do a lot of different things and pull a lot of people together that wouldn't have known each other, for example, like from a university, maybe that's a public free university and then the technological university where there were a lot of engineers where we had some, things in common, but different socioeconomic levels, completely. And we were able to, pull these different kids together and kind of form a different community than they would have had, at their universities, and then go out and do, serve the underserved, basically.
Wow, I bet you saw, again, just being me, St. Louis, you think of Mexico, you go to the all-inclusives and you're on the beach, and some may wander off, some may not wander off because of what they may or may haven't heard. But what's it like to live outside of the resorts?
Right.
What's that experience like?
It's amazing. I mean, Mexico City is amazing. It's just first of all, the culture of the people. They're so open, so willing to talk to you. They want to learn from you. And if you're a person that wants to learn from them, it's, it can be an amazing experience. I try to take that into account here when people come from other places, because I feel like sometimes we're not so open. But, it's just like, hey, what do you think? What are you doing? And so there's that. And then the whole city itself. I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of pollution. There's a lot of traffic, but it's every neighborhood is unique. The history is crazy amazing. I mean, there's cool, there's just, if you could hit every neighborhood in Mexico City, just to see all the different things, it's an amazing place.
And I know 4 years you built a lot of deep relationships where you go back and stay with them, or they come up here. I mean, from people from Mexico City.
Yes. Yeah. Still in touch with them. Thank God for WhatsApp now. You can just send voice text back and forth, videos.
Speaking of, growing up in the 80s and 90s,
right.
And now we have all these, that'll be our stories to the younger kids.
Right.
I remember when the phone was connected to the wall with a cord and we had to turn that thing around.
Right.
And they're like, what? You couldn't send pictures on that?
Yeah, no. So that's really nice. It makes it easier to keep in touch. And still get to see people, and hoping to get to take Ella down there sometime and get my daughter and be able to expose her. She wants to get her Spanish up to speed. And so just living with folks, I think, is the best way to do that, staying with them and speaking Spanish.
And like you said, open-minded. I mean, whether it's in a different country or with different people, but I think when you talked about your success at Proctor and Gamble and being at Georgia Tech and meeting more women and joining a sorority that maybe you wouldn't have in a different place. I mean, all that comes from, in my mind, being open to, just getting out beyond yourself and improving and learning more. And I think that can be a challenge that our society is facing maybe today, of being open, and not only open to intake, but open to sharing your true self and your authentic self.
Yeah. I think a lot of people might be scared to do that.
Right. Scared of being attacked or what's happened. All those technologies are great, but then at the same time, double-edged sword, right? They're also awful because people can hide behind a keyboard and say mean things. So trying to navigate that. But I still think it's, at the end of the day, if you can filter or be careful, being open is truly probably the best way to live life. Just be open to all sorts of experiences, knowledge, love, whatever.
Sure.
Laughter, light, joy.
Well, and you can always find the good in something or in somebody, no matter how different they are from you. I think there's always good. There's always something to be thankful for, and I think if you're looking for those things instead of what's wrong with this person, what that you're just going to have a better experience and be able to learn more. And I think that's where we always want to keep learning, keep growing. And if we're open to people, perspectives, we at least can take some nuggets.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because now I have hope that after this is all done and said and we walk out of here, you're not cursing me for making you do this with me.
No. Wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I can use your own words against you. Remember, Pam, be open. There's a good in something. So we're in Mexico 4 years, which is amazing. What gets you to come back up to the States?
Well, I ended up staying 5. And then I asked to stay longer, because they try to tell you should come back every 4 years, spend a little time, then go back. It's kind of like their structure. And I said, no, I don't want to come back. I want to stay a 5th year, but then I'll come back. And so I applied with the intent of going back to Mexico City. I wasn't coming back permanently, but I applied to a fellowship at Indiana University for Latin American Caribbean Studies Masters, because I said after I did that mechanical engineering degree that I would not study anything ever again that I didn't 100% just love for loving the material, So it wasn't like mechanics of solids. It was, I got to read Latin American literature and discuss it, and so and talk about history. So it was really just for fun and just enjoyment. But I got the fellowship, so I got to go for free, and I worked like 20 hours a week in the center and got to do outreach in the community. It was part of my job.
I bet your parents were happy you got to do that for free.
They were like, this girl. We told her not to go to Mexico, but here she is, So, did that. And
so you said you intended to go back. So how long was that program?
The fellowship? Mm-hmm. So it was, I could have got out in a year and a half if I had only done the master's. And while I was there, probably, I can't remember exactly, but sometime before the first year was over, sad story a little bit, but determined I wasn't going to go back, and because of some issues with our board. And so I was trying to work with my team, and even while I was in the States, I was trying to kind of find some common ground and go, hey, we could still do this. But again, back to kind of the truth thing, you can't, I can't do something the way somebody else wants me to do it if I don't believe in the way they want me to do it. So, and our team was that way too. So we had kind of gotten together and said, okay, we're not going to be able to do this anymore. And so we let them know that, and I went ahead and finished the master's degree. And I was also taking classes in case I wanted to teach Spanish, get certified to do that. So that made it take a little longer. But I knew I wasn't in a hurry and was going to have to kind of reassess and go, okay, what do I do next from here? So
yeah, what did you do? How did you reassess?
Well, I considered everything, literally from being a Spanish teacher to doing something in, even something down in Mexico, or, did I want to go back into engineering? Did I want to travel internationally? Did I want to use the language skills, the culture, and so I was looking at all kinds of things. And that's when I got the phone call from my dad, actually, who, there were 2 guys that founded the TSA, the bar business, and then he had gone to work for them, and he had eventually become like a third partner in the business. And then when he called, it was him, one of the original founders, and then another sales guy that worked for them, and some inside salespeople. And he called both me and my sister and said, hey, do you guys want to do this? And I was kind of like, what? Because I always looked at what he did as like a sales job. And I knew there was a technical component. And he had said to me many times, oh, I wish I was an engineer. It would make this job so much easier. But, I was doing my own thing. I wanted to be doing my own thing. And my sister was in a job she didn't love. It was a sales job. And she was immediately jumped like, yeah, let's do this.
Did she have an engineering background too, or
no.
just sales? So
yeah, no, not technical at all. I mean, she's design oriented, but like, she was more designing spaces or furniture, that kind of stuff. And then, so I took me a while. I mean, I had a lot of thinking to do, and that's where, being open, right? So I was like, this sales thing, I don't know about that. What does that mean? And that was the part that made me the most nervous, because I'm like, I don't want to be like trying to get people to buy stuff. Like, so, I mean, that's I want to solve problems. I want to, and so, talked to them, had a lot of conversations, and decided, okay, we'll try this. It gets me back to St. Louis, which I think is probably a good thing at this point, and be close to family. And I thought, well, I'll try it, and I kind of said, and in my mind, I kind of said, okay, I'm going to give this 2 years, and I'm either going to like it, or, by then I should know, do I like this? Is there enough here for me to really want to do this? And so that's how I started. And the other thing was the potential of owning my own business. I think that was a big factor because I was always interested in something like that, but didn't really know how to go about it.
What was interesting about it to you? Because for a lot of people, they'd be like, heck no.
Right. And that's how I am with everything. I don't know what I'm getting into, so it sounds great. No. But no, I think I just the idea of running my own show, kind of getting to grow a business in the way that I would want to grow it, work, being a part of a team to do that. All of that was interesting. And then the business side of it a little bit, I didn't study any business, but I had always, in my backup, my other choice when I was deciding engineering was international business. So I thought, it would be interesting. It's, it's just like anything else, right? You can figure it out or you can't, and then it's not for you and you move on. But yeah, it ended up all working out.
But I love what you said too, and I think it was just a small piece, just part of the conversation. But you said, and I think my husband and I have talked about this with our kids, like go into a situation and say, okay, what's the breaking point? Okay, I'm going to give it 2 years. So before you get into the heat of it and the emotions and the da-da-da-da, like be willing to say, okay, I'm willing to give it 2 years. I'm not going to give it 3 months and just give up, but I'm not going to try to stick something out for 5 years. Like I'm going to go in. Did you have, beyond just that, did you have a game plan of, okay, I think I like all these things. It's the families interspersed in there. That might be a challenge. Like here's my drop dead. I got to get out, or anything like that beyond just, I'm just going to see where this goes for 2 years.
Yeah, I was just going to see where it goes. And I think it's good that I kind of had that 2 years because I can't remember at what point it was, but it was probably a little bit before a year. I kind of was like, oh, I don't know if I made the right choice, because especially at the beginning, you don't have the relationships. You don't have so you're trying to, one, show that you're credible at the same time as learning everything you need to be credible. And also, trying to figure out, how do I do this in a way where I really get to enjoy this? Like, I don't want to just do this thing.
Bring some Frisbees.
Bring some Frisbees, right? There were no Frisbees this time. So yeah, and I think the part that was what was really bugging me down is like, I kind of had this vision of like, oh gosh, do I have to like cold call people all the time? Do I just have to call people up and be like, hey, do you need any of this kind of stuff? Can I come and talk to you? And because there was some of that, a lot of that happening just to get in front of people so you could start what do you guys need? Here's what we do. And that is not my favorite thing. Now I'm much better at it because I have been doing this so much longer, and I have I have a better story to tell. At the beginning, you don't have a lot of story to tell. So it's even harder for me to do that because I'm like, I'm just like, it just felt like I was calling people. So that was the point where I was kind of like, I don't know. But it evolves. It doesn't stay like that forever. And as you grow and you learn and you're, now I'm spending I don't spend any time making those phone calls. I mean, I shouldn't say any time, but every once in a while I have to call someone and go, hey, I see this project is happening. I don't know anybody over there, but who can I talk to about this? But now it's like, I've been doing this 15 years. I have this project to reference. I can tell you all about this. And, what do you guys want to do? How can we help?
Was there a moment or like specific interaction where you're like, okay, no, this is going to work?
It's kind of weird because it was almost right at that 2-year mark. All of these things started clicking. And I think it was, because we had so many different lines of equipment, there was a lot to learn. And so the technical side was kind of coming together for me, like, oh, this is how this worked, this is how this worked, this is, and then also starting to build those relationships with customers and then having people call me back because I had already helped them with something and going, oh, okay. So this is easier. And now I feel like I'm more helping people solve their problems and helping them get what they need rather than just trying to, find people to work with.
as they kind of say, or as I've learned in just even my business, what I do for a living, not just podcasts, is relationships versus transactions. Sounds like you love to live in that relationship zone. And of course, it's going to take some time to build. And I would imagine with what you do, you got to build a lot of credibility and trust because that it can't break down.
Right.
Or it can't not fit together.
Right.
It's got to work.
Right. We cause people downtime. They're not making product. They're losing millions. And yeah.
Well, somebody probably could get hurt or be.
That too.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of pressure on your shoulders
Well,
to get it right. And your team.
Yeah.
And
right.
the whole team and everything.
Yeah. No, there is some of that, but I just, and it's so much, it's once you're out there, once you know, and even the new relationships now are easier because it's like I have the other old relationships. They know I know so-and-so, they know I did this work and it didn't fall apart. So that's helpful, and then I'm talking to younger people who are a lot younger than me, which is interesting, and they are like, oh, you can do all of that, sometimes. I mean, that's the reaction. I'm like, oh, yeah, we can do that. And, it used to be that they had these huge engineering departments where all these people knew how to do all these things. And now they're hiring in these young engineers and they're trying to keep the process running. They're trying to, improve things, but they're lean, And so if it's not their area of expertise and I can do something that they know they can trust me to do it and they're just managing it from their side, it's like this, big sigh of relief for them to go, oh, wow, okay, you can take care of this. I'll work with you. I'll make sure that you know what we need, but run with it, and then we know how to make it work. So we just do our thing and they trust us to do it, which makes it easier for us to just do the entire thing and make it work for them.
So a couple dynamics there. You come into this business, family, and potentially, I don't know, and I don't want to put words in the mouth because we haven't talked about it yet, female. We're there beyond just saying I need to show I'm credible, which means I need to learn the stuff to know I'm credible. I need to enjoy it, all that stuff. Anything from families related here, plus were there additional layers of challenges that you had to deal with there?
Sure. I mean, I think with my dad, our personalities are totally different. We have a lot in common and a lot different. So I shouldn't say totally different, but, so the way I learn, I got to know how it all works. So, cause if I don't understand it, then I can't really do it, I got to understand what I'm doing to get from point A to point B and to explain it to my customers so that they understand that I know what I'm doing and that, if they have input, then they can. It's just, and he did it a different way where there were certain things that, I tried to get an explanation for and I couldn't get it to my level of satisfaction. So then I had to go other places to get it, and I figured, oh, okay. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this kind of business, but for me to do it, I've got to know X, Y, and Z. And so, that was a challenge at first because I'd be like, how? I need to know this, and then my sister and I also very different, and there were some. I guess growing pains to that. But I think what worked out really well with us is that we do have different strengths. And so we were able to kind of figure that out probably in the first 5 years of who should do what. And, we both have customers and we both are going to do that no matter what. But as far as running the business, some of the technical stuff, we kind of came to, okay, I do this, you do this, and that works great for us. So it was a growing thing. Just, and as siblings, you're a little less professional about it, right? You're like, hey, why are you doing that and I'm not doing that? I mean, a little different. But I guess that also makes it easier to work through because, okay, well, I didn't realize that was a thing.
You're getting out on the
table. Do you want to try it? Let's look at it and see who wants to do this. So yeah, it probably did get some things out on the table sooner than it would have in a different scenario.
Did potential clients, customers, anyone see you differently because family relations, et cetera? Was it harder?
So I tried to not really bring that up, honestly, and I think Angie was probably the same way. I mean, my dad retired a couple of years after we got into this, and then the other founder, he stayed on and worked for us when we bought the business out. So he was still around for a while, and then he ended up retiring, and so then it became Angie and my business. But I just didn't mention it. Some people would know. Some people would somehow, if they had worked with my dad, or, oh, wait, are you related to Tom? Or, and so that would happen. But, I just, I think I wanted to build my own reputation in my own right. So I just would not bring that up. So I think in most cases, people were not aware necessarily.
Do you think that was helpful to not bring that up?
I don't know. I think so. For me personally, it was, because I didn't want people to think I was there because of that, and, or that I didn't know what I was doing, or, I don't know. I just always kind of worried about that a little bit.
Sounds like it was more potentially what would have been going through your head and holding you back, versus not necessarily what other people would or wouldn't have thought, but you wanted, like, kind of going back to that credibility and building it yourself and doing it your way. I don't want to even tell my own story in my head, what someone might be thinking that could hold me back.
Right. Exactly.
And I, again, don't want you to speak for Angie, but did she have similar challenges or issues, or was it different because you have different skill sets? And
I think I think the similar ones was the figuring out who did what. I think she would probably say the same thing as I did. Oh yeah, there were times where I was like, well, geez, why is Pam doing this, or what? What are we doing here? But yeah, I think her technical learning curve was longer than mine was, and so I became more of a technical support for her, and I still am today, and on really complex projects. But we work really well together, knowing, hey, I can do this, and if I need extra help because I'm spending all this time on helping you with this, you can do these things and take that off my plate. So we have a little bit of an ebb and flow there, which I think helps, and it's very easy for us to be flexible in our work with each other. I think we've gotten to that point, so I think that helps.
Because you mentioned sales, you were a little bit like, oh,
right.
Sales, the tech side what was it that helped you? You're obviously good at it now. How'd you get that way?
On the sales side, you mean? Yeah, because you're right. Because at the beginning, Angie would just power call these people and have no problem doing it. I'm like, oh my God, if I have to call another person, so... I think it's because it's relational. And so now I have all these relationships. So now I'm getting phone calls. If it's a random phone call, it's because somebody told somebody to call me, or, oh yeah, so-and-so told me you do this type of stuff. So it's like people are calling me with a need, which is much easier than trying to find the need. So I was able to change the way I looked at it from the get-go once I got into being able to solve problems and go, okay, I'm helping, I'm figuring out how to get them what they need, because then I'm in my space where I want to be.
You're throwing the frisbee,
I'm figuring something out, I'm having a good time, I'm talking to them about it, and so then it becomes a lot easier.
What are some of the things that you have done or still do to be really good at building those relationships?
I probably talk too much. No, I mean, I do get in places and, we'll just talk about, and I try to, not just talking a lot, but I try to find out about them, try to find out what's important to them and their jobs or outside of work. Some people want to talk about that, some people don't. So I let them kind of talk about what they want to talk about. And then in just working together, every facility, every plant, every office kind of has a different culture, a different way to get things done. And so once you kind of know how each place is, it's easier. And even when a new person comes in, like a new engineer, I can kind of influence, hey, okay, do we want to talk to this person too, and make sure that they, agree with this plan, or, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I don't know. I just think just the knowledge of how a place works, who's there, and even when people are changing, because that's happening, constantly, it's, kind of bridging the gap between the last person and the next person.
Well, it sounds like it goes back to, I remember writing down when you were good at project engineering, at Proctor and Gamble, being a good listener. So you're probably asking a ton of questions and really listening, plus the communication side of it, and figuring out where they want to take that relationship. Is it lunch? Is it just purely in the office or whatnot? But kind of asking, being curious about them. Mm-hmm. So we talked about some of the challenges and the skills you've had to build. Any challenge being a female walking into the room, hey, I'm going to sell you this big system. You talked about the $2 million small job, right? I can imagine some of these things you put in place are huge dollars, supremely important. Like you said, if it breaks down, they're not making money. Plus, somebody could get hurt if the air pollution. And I know I'm dumbing this down to my level of understanding. But any time where they've answered the phone and they react to hearing a female's voice or see you walk in a room, or any challenges or obstacles there that you've ever faced?
Yeah, no, I think there are. I think it goes both ways. Like, I think sometimes on the phone they're going to be friendlier because I'm female, because they hear less female voices and they're like, "Oh, hi, yeah, what," and they just have a different, potentially a different way of interacting, So sometimes I think that can be helpful as a starting point. I have experienced, and it depends. It's not all the time by any means, but there are situations where I walk in a room, and if I have a man with me, either from the manufacturer or even from TSA, where if it's my project and say I know way more than this guy about it, potentially, they keep looking at him to ask. And so it happened one time, with one of our employees, Ken, and he's older than me. He was, so he does look older. So it could be some of that too. But they just kept looking at him, and he had brought me with him. It was his customer, so that I could help him figure this out. You know what I mean? And so, but he was great. And he didn't want to be put on the spot and pretend he knew what he didn't know. So he would just go, well, you really should be talking to Pam here. She's the engineer. She's the one that's going to help me orchestrate this. I brought her for her expertise. So, just Pam could probably answer that a lot better than I can. And then, and it's funny because some of them would still talk to him and I'd be answering. I'm like, well, this is kind of awkward, but okay. And then some would, kind of catch on and change that they would look at you. And so, and I again, this is one of those things where I say you kind of get used to it. It doesn't happen, this is not 90% of the time or anything, but it, when it does happen, it's a little frustrating because you're like, oh, come on over here. But I think for the most part, now I just kind of go, it's people's backgrounds. It's what they're used to. They don't mean it like, it's not some kind of aggressive thing against me. It's just kind of where they're at. So I just kind of go with it, and it feels a little weird sometimes but it's, it's not the end of the world, I guess.
So I think it sounds like, hey, things are going to happen. Be flexible, be open, don't shy away, don't back away, lean into your expertise and speak up. But also, if you or somebody else is in that situation, like I think it was Ken, you said, they can say, no, this is who you should be talking to. They're the expert here. And so that would be helpful in, trying to redirect or build your credibility too, to have that support co-partner, whatnot, co-pilot doing that for you too.
Exactly. And I think some people are more aware when that happens than others. Some people would notice that right away. Some people wouldn't. And so I think that awareness to go, oh yeah, I noticed that this is happening, and hey, let me just say we're, something to help it out. But yeah, there's also times where, and I don't know, I think a lot of women might fall into this category of I don't love to just toot my own horn. I don't want to walk into a room and here's my resume, here's my, whatever, this is why you should trust me kind of a thing. But it's sort of a, it can be helpful to learn to do that a little bit. So, at least what I'm comfortable with. So I can be comfortable with, somehow dropping in the conversation in a casual moment that, oh yeah, if they start talking about engineering or whatever, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm mechanical, da da da. And then that does help. You can see oh yeah, where'd you go? People start, it's like, oh yeah. And then, if I can say Georgia Tech, then it's like, oh wow, that's cool. Just because less people around here went to Georgia Tech, So that kind of stuff is something that I would probably have avoided, to my natural thing where I want to do it on my own. But now I've kind of gone, okay, I got to give people something sometimes, and a little bit, as long as I don't sound like I'm like a egomaniac, I can get comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think that's huge because, whether it's women or not or whatever, they're, and I'm the same way, have a tendency to laugh more or not. It's like, no, lean in. It's okay to be, you still have to be yourself, but tougher, harder. Like you said, slip in, but there's that fine line. You can't go overconfident, but you still need to stand up for yourself. That's a skill, like a fine wine, I think you develop and figure out over time. But yeah, you might have to lean into.
Yep.
That's a good point. But yeah, don't back down, don't back away, don't lessen your confidence, but find those ways to stand strong, stand out, and throw those nuggets in.
Right. Throw those nuggets in. And then it is easier now too, because I can say, oh yeah, no, on this project, here's what we need to do. Here's why I've had this experience. And that's more valuable than all the little, the little titles and degrees and all that kind of stuff. But I have found that sometimes that can help too, just for people to go, oh, okay, yeah, you're one of us.
Right. You're not bringing your resume and just sliding it slowly over the table. Any other business owner, engineer, tips, tricks, obstacles that you've faced that you want to share how to overcome?
I think, there's all kinds of things. But when I think about growing a business, which most business owners probably want to do, there's a lot of ways to approach that. And I think finding a strategy that works with your skill set, like with what you're really good at. Because I think sometimes there's like for me, if I see something, oh gosh, we could do this, but it's going to cause me to do, all this work in an area that I don't enjoy, then I'm not going to be as good at it. I'm not going to, so finding kind of that match of how do we combine strategy with what we're really naturally good at so that we can grow. And, again, if we're having fun, if we're enjoying it, we're going to be so much better at it. And I am not like a natural detailed person per se, but like in engineering, certain things you have to be detailed with. So, I make sure I set aside time to do that kind of thing when I can focus on that. But I don't want to be doing that, 24 hours a day, because I couldn't. I wouldn't do it well. So I want the time for that, but I want time for other things. And so when I can put together, like for me, what's really helped to grow with TSA is when I can put together these systems and these complicated projects where I'm adding a lot of value for these people, and they're not having to figure any of this out, and I'm going to do the whole system for them, and maybe we're even going to do the installation. So we're coordinating the whole effort, and I really enjoy that, and I want to do it right. So I'm double checking, I'm triple checking, I'm communicating with the installers, I'm communicating with the customer, I'm communicating with my manufacturer, I'm communicating with all of the different pieces to make sure they all go together. That they're arriving at the right time, all that. So I'm going back into my project management mode, where I still get to do the engineering, but I have all this other stuff that makes it, work for me and add a lot of value for them, and then therefore grow our business.
Well, it sounds like, for a long time people said focus on your weaknesses, build those up. But a lot of that thinking has now shifted, which I think aligns with what you're saying is, what are you really good at? What do you enjoy? Because you're going to pour yourself into that because you are good at it, and you're going to enjoy it because you are good at it. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't like doing things I'm not good at, right, especially at this age anymore. So it's like, so surrounding yourself with people who can fill in, who like to do the things that you don't like to do, and they're good at it. And it sounds like a lot, whether it's your business partner or those at the company who can. So delegate,
right?
Be okay to say, I'm not great at this and I don't like it, so I'm going to find the right person to come in and help me do it.
Yep.
Sounds like a lot of what you were talking about there, not only when you mentioned how you and Angie work together and how that kind of fell into place, but maybe a lot of other people that you've pulled in to surround you to, again, deliver the best project, but you can really just sit in your zone of genius and have fun and be good at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. And I mean, obviously your weaknesses, you can't ignore them. And there's some things you just have to do. But again, minimizing that so that when you do have to do that, you can, okay, I just have to focus on this for 30 minutes and I'm going to get it right because I know this isn't, you know what I mean? But then it's 30 minutes instead of this is what I did all week, It's a lot easier to push through that.
Or I could sit in this classroom with 3 girls and those would be the only women I know while I'm at Georgia Tech. Or I'm going to get myself outside my comfort zone because what I want is relationships. So I'm going to join that one of very few.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I think that goes back to just a lot of what you shared already, doing it your way, being comfortable and confident and passionate that way. So just because you're not going to do it somebody else's way. So leaning into what you want to do, how you want to do it, which allows you to then be confident, but also being willing to say, I don't know everything, so I'm going to find the resources to help. And I think a lot of that then goes back to what you said, be a good listener, communicate, acknowledge all the roles, get the right team in place, and be curious, be open, build relationships, ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So companies that you work with, people who, if they need your help, how do they find you? So who do you really partner with and help solve the problems, like you said?
Okay, yeah. So most of our customers are end users who make something like dog food, or dog treats, or people food of any sort, muffin mixes, anything that has granules, powders. We are moving those, we're conveying them, we're feeding them, we're doing different things in the process, and the people at those companies that usually are the ones we're working with are either the engineers, project engineers, process engineers, sometimes maintenance managers. And, that's kind of who we're helping. On the air pollution side, it's all of those same people, but then it adds a wider breadth of customers just because there's a lot of equipment out there that maybe we wouldn't provide, but it's going to generate fumes or things that need to get removed from the air. So we can, we work with those folks too. And then the best way to get a hold of us, is our webpage. It's www.tsasales.com and our phone number,
Everything found there,
yes,
out on the internet, on the webpage.
Correct.
Well, Pam, I know this wasn't your top of your priority list this year to do, which is to come and join me. But I knew the pieces of your story that I knew. I was like, she's got some things to share just from experience, but also just such a good person and good friend. So I appreciate you humoring me. And maybe when you leave, you'll be like, I wasn't as bad as I thought. And Cynthia's still not that bad of a person. So I really appreciate
Thank you for having me and pushing me.
Getting outside your comfort zone, being open to it. And I think you'll hear it. I think others will listen and they'll say, that was a lot of good content information. Somebody's going to hear it that needed to hear it that day, and it's going to help them get through a situation. So thank you for being willing to share and help.
You're welcome.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.